Negro, Negado, na first class. Em 12 minutos, ele aterra o avião e demite o pilot. The aircraft carrier is made with a loud sound. Ronnie Daniels, one of the country's two most powerful businessmen, was there, not a runner in the economic class. His suitcase was more and more accumulating with every passing second. The pilot in white uniform observed the ship's commissioner in front of him, trying to understand what was happening. In one of the companies he ran, more than 3,000 people depended on him every day to ensure that businesses stayed ahead. But at that time, I couldn't guarantee a decent place that should be quiet. I understand that we are overbooked, but is there any reason for not placing me in the first class, a frequent passaggero of your company? Wouldn't it be easier for everyone? Ronnie's voice sounded calm, but it was impossible to perceive the tension that was hidden behind each word. The comissária olhou para ele, depois para el bilhete and finally para el cloth del computer. The answer I saw was someone I didn't expect and certainly didn't want. Unfortunately, sir, we have a seat in the economic class. We can offer you an extra chair in the corridor, but we don't have any more vacancies in the first class. Ronnie breathed out, feeling a wave of frustration take over his body. He was a 41-year-old man, well-known, intelligent, and above all, wise or deserving. But there, the aircraft was being treated as any common person. So was not just a comfort quest, it was a question de respect. He had conquered his top place and would not want to be treated differently. Before we begin, I want to know where you are assisting. Please leave us comments in your city or country. I read all your comments and I love connecting with our communities around the world. Please take the opportunity to click the download button and activate the button to receive all the news. Enter 1 to give us comments. Your support is essential so that we can achieve more information that we urgently need. The police officer apologized, but Ronnie was no longer aware. Your thoughts were racing 1,000 miles an hour. He knew that this incident could be an opportunity to show that, for him, nothing would be more important than being treated with the dignity that his position demanded. Isso não vai ficar assim, he murmured, almost to himself. More or enough for the comissária to ouvisse. What happened next was fast. Ronnie feel the weight of the tension is not there. He knew that that trip was just a daily routine for most of the passengers, but for him, that incident was something personal. He headed to the cockpit. No time left to restart. In a second, the door was open and he was face to face as the pilot. The commander was sitting at his post, distracted by the control panel. "Commander," Ronnie said, his voice firm, more authoritative than ever, "we are going to need a small adjustment." The old pilot stopped him, surprised, and the 10-2 recovered. "Senor, no passenger is allowed to enter the cockpit during your flight." "I know perfectly well that it is allowed and that it is not," Ronnie interrupted, his voice becoming increasingly impatient. "But it's inacceptable, sir, that you, as CEO and one of the two largest clients of this airline, do not have the right to adequate treatment. So here's what we're going to do. You solve that problem now, or—" The pilot, visibly uncomfortable, gaguejou, "Oh, okay, senor." Ronnie doesn't care more about what he talks about. He knew that the power he had was only in his company's, but not in his own control of that aircraft. He opened the cockpit and headed to the commissioners. "You need to act as a company director now. You want to take an attitude." The police officer was visibly nervous, but tried to maintain composure. He pressed the radio and, in just a few seconds, the message was transmitted to the air command tower. But Ronnie was ready to continue without waiting. He, with a calm and precise gesture, removed his cell phone from inside his suit. The climate was not muted, or what was previously a tense atmosphere now became something even more heavy, almost palpable. As he became more firm, Ronnie digitized quickly, or that Fez Nakel instantly would change the course of that trip. I'm sending an email right now to the board. The pilot, who clearly has no minimal competition, will be fired, and more importantly, the company will pay for my discomfort. It doesn't matter what happens, you will do what happens. The commissaria olho for him, stunned. She didn't know what to do. It was strange that Ronnie was doing it, but there was a force in his attitude that made it clear that he was not playing. It was not just a quest on an economic class trip. He was there to teach a book. In just a few minutes, the tension was raised to an even more intense level. The pilot, hearing that the situation was out of control, tried to turn quickly. "Senor, please, you will contact the command tower and resolve this now," he said, now visibly terrified. Ronnie barely saw him with a calm, more threatening smile. He knew what he had in me, and he is certain of one thing: no more, ever, or it would be treated as a simple passaggero. And it was then that the fez, or that seemed unthinkable. Unlink the phone and click directly for the pilot. "Prepare for a surprise," it says. "Start and control the situation in a dangerous manner." Ronnie opened the buttons in the aircraft cabin, and in seconds the plane made an unexpected movement. He was assuming or controlling the situation. The pilot ficou panic, and Ronnie would immediately leave everyone speechless. Ronnie's voice has just won an unexpected direction, a direction in which he was the only one to mention as rules. The airplane cabin was silent, a tense silence, broken only by the turbines and by the pilot's instructions on the radio. Ronnie felt adrenaline pulsating in his eyes. He knew either what he was doing, or even less credited with knowing. The feeling of power was overwhelming. He was not in command, and had no power to throw him away. The commander was pale, but there was no more space for discussion. When the plane makes that unexpected movement, all the passengers will feel changed. Some, more sensitive, perceive logo. I was out of control, but we didn't know how long I could go to the situation. "What are you doing?" the pilot asked, his voice trembling. He opened his eyes against the control panel, trying to regain his composure. "I'm just doing it, or it should be ugly. Vous without turbulence, Commander," answered Ronnie, without anything to do with him. "Now, you will call the tower. And when you return, I hope that the Senor has a better answer for me." He unfastened the cockpit, now with a suitcase in one of his hands, and walked into the economy class cabin. Passou pelos passageiros que estavam em silêncio, sem saber o que era acontecendo. Some are confused, visibly nervous, others are still trying to understand the magnitude of the situation. It was then that Ronnie saw what he was trying to do. The emergency button was there, within reach, and it was pressed without hesitation. "We are diverting to the nearest airport," he said out loud, so that everyone could hear. "This is what you are going to do now. I don't agree. You can leave." The tension flashes away quickly. The commissioner, visibly nervous, tried to intervene. "Senhor, please, isso não é apropriado. O senhor não pode fazer isso." "No pode." Ronnie laughed, a cold laugh without fun. "You are the CEO of companies that move billions of dollars every day. You do what you want." He knew that this situation was beyond his control, but somehow he was gone. The half stamp on the pilot's face, the confusion of the two passengers, everything here was a reaction that he knew to be inevitable. But it did not matter. He wanted more. As he approached the cockpit again, he heard the pilot's dejected cries. "Senor, please, what are you doing? We can solve everything. Let's go back to the normal course." Ronnie olhou para o relógio. Passavam it takes 12 minutes from the moment he makes the decision not to submerge himself in the situation. The plane was now just a few kilometers from a small regional airport. The tension was palpable, but he knew that this had to end. He is nothing more than that incident as a simple travel misunderstanding. It was something bigger. It was about power, respect, and control. "Let's do this quickly and without further conversation. You're going to use this aircraft, and then you're going to hand over your keys to me. I am assuming or controlling. O señor foi demitido, he said firmly, directing the aircraft to the position that should be lined up at the airport. The commander tried to protest, but his expression of despair was clear. Señor, this is completely illegal. You have no authority to... I have authority now. Pause the plane. Ronnie has no space for more arguments. He knew that the situation was far from any code of conduct, far from any personal training. He was relying only on his instinct, on the need to show that, in fact, he was always the last word. The pilot, without options, starts maneuvering the plane for an emergency landing. It was not the original plan, and he knew that this movement would make the controls more difficult to operate, but Ronnie was determined. He credited not what he was doing. He confirmed that his life, his career, and his success became capable of governing any situation, including an air emergency. A cabine ficou even more tense. Some passengers were in our seats, others were listening to Janelle, and others were still trying to understand what was happening. The murmuring among them was growing, but none of them could stand up or intervene. Ronnie had given a clear message. He was the one who was not in command. The landing was abrupt, more difficult than expected. The plane does not balance, as the turbines struggle to reduce its speed. O commander fez o possível para garantir que o posse fosse safe, embora o suor escorresse por seu rosto e as mãos tremessem ao longo del painel de controle. We are quasi lá, said the pilot, now with very enthusiasm. He knew that he had lost his authority. His only objective now was to land the plane safely. It didn't work. He knew that his career was over. The plane together or only with a strong bag. They crossed onto the track with a sudden brake, but finally parked. Ronnie Daniels doesn't need anything else. The message stops Jane, and she sees the small airport terminal, but with her own message, she has it or checks it now. He got up from the chair, looking back. Several passengers began to breathe a sigh of relief, others more curious than ever. Ronnie did not feel remorse. He had done something that was necessary. Now, he said, turning to the commissioners, I am tired of the economic class and placed in a place at the height of my status. O commander, without words, saiu da cabine de comando. Ronnie fez a gesture for the door. He knew that that incident would never happen again. He was ready to make history, and he could not throw him out of the center of the box. And it was a moment, not the end of an abrupt landing and a burst of tension, that he knew that his life would never be the same again. Pressing our passengers was palpable. The aircraft was now parked on a remote airport runway along two main ports. We don't have to move. We don't have commissarios. We don't have pasajeros. They knew that they were testifying something out of the ordinary, but they could not fully understand the full extent of what had just happened. Ronnie got up slowly, adjusting to the gravity. His face was impassive, but his eyes were burning with a chama de chem that had not barely defeated a battle, but the system itself was challenged. The road was tied to the cabin entrance door, where the board commissioner, visibly lost, was waiting. Senor, please, you oficiais da companhia estão vindo, he said, his voice low and tense. Ronnie olhou without a pingo of empathy. I know very well what I'm doing. If the company has some problem with this, they'll try to find out for me. Here, they'll take me to the economic class and place me in a comfortable place like what I'm doing. The commissaria olhou para ele, hesitou second, but the voice of Ronnie was intransigent. She barely nodded without words and went to the cockpit to ask for the pilot's instructions. In a few minutes, she turned around with an expression that was even more worried. Senor, the company directorate, we want to act as sir as we disembark. Ottimo, I'll be waiting, Ronnie responded, with a cold smile on his lips. As he sat in the first-class chair, Ronnie felt a little relief. Now he was where he should be. but adrenaline still pulsed in his vision. He knew that this thing would not go unnoticed. The airline would not fly cheap. But at that moment, he was prepared for anything. Logo, the aircraft was erased. So the doors will open and the passengers will begin to descend, still stuck and murmuring among themselves. Some are half-hearted, others are incredulous. But Ronnie was calm. He sat in his chair, observing everything, as if he were a spectator of his own story. He had made that moment, and now all that remained was to wait. Minutes later, the first officials of the Chegaram Company, followed by a security team. They were men and women with serious appearances, dressed in dark suits and impassive expressions. Ronnie didn't get up when we entered. He barely looked at you, waiting or realizing that he knew he was about to come. "Senor Daniels," said the director of the airline company, a man of Maya Edad, his face tense, but with an obvious attempt to maintain calm. "Do you know what you're doing, don't you know?" Ronnie calmly got up from his first-class chair with a defiant smile. "Eu sei exatamente o que fiz. Mas a questão é, do you know o que fez ao treat-me como se eu fosse qualquer another passageiro?" The director did not respond immediately, trying to appear more composed than he really was. "The key is for the security group on your side, as backup is sought." But he knew that moment was beyond his control. The airline had gotten into a bigger game than I imagined. "It's not like anything works, senor. Oh, senor can't just do it or do it." Ronnie smiled, bowing his head slightly. "Oh, you can. You are the CEO of various large companies. You can do much more than what you are. And you know what you are doing. You are here for the first class. You are paying me for you. You can't deny me, and you can't ignore me." O diretor olhou para ele, trying to restrain raiva. "Você não tem o direito de agir assim. Você pode be powerful no corporate world, pero aqui, no avião, quem comanda somos nós." Ronnie has a step forward, his voice firm and sharp. "You can command the plane, but your command or your destination, and me, is much greater than yours." Ele deu uma pause, como se savorasse o momento. Everyone in the room was tense, waiting for the next word, the next attitude. Ronnie was only discussing a simple violation of protocol. He was challenging the system, questioning the power of an entire company, and crumbling the structures of a society that would always be relegated to the role of other. "I'm not here to waste time. If you don't understand, you can explain in a very simple way. The commander, as I just mentioned, is resigned. I hope for a public explanation. Now, if we don't have concrete details, the company will suffer consequences that neither you nor yourselves directors will be able to control." The director was without words, or his brother was beginning to form his head. He knew that this was a situation that he could not simply ignore. To press to keep the image of the company intact and not to let the scandal spread, it was evident. "Você não pode fazer isso," he repeated, trying to appear firm. But his words say with a tom of doubt. "Of course I can," Ronnie responded, his tone now softer, more lethal. "E já fiz." That said, a part of Ronnie knew that regardless of what happened next, he had established something irrefutable. It was not just a quest for a first-class seat. It was a question de respect. He was tired of being ignored, of being treated with indifference. The airline could do whatever it wanted, but he knew that that day would become historic. For him, for everyone who was there. And finally, when the men and women in suits finally come out of the aircraft, the directors would begin to understand the size of the mistake they made. Ronnie Daniels was nothing more than a simple CEO. He had become a man who was breaking down, who had no halfway to move. He had transformed his own indignation into something greater, something that could inspire or scare, but never be ignored.